big hello and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. After nearly 2 years of lockdowns, travel bans, work and school from home, we're slowly seeming to crawl back to normalcy. The question being posed on the show today is whether COVID-19 has changed retail shopper behavior forever. The impact of the pandemic on modern trade has been heavy, given the fact that most of them were forced to shut down for months due to stay-at-home orders. This led to consumers adapting and getting used to online purchases and hence have somewhat forgotten what it means to visit a hypermarket. Will 2022 see shoppers coming back to physical stores, or has shopper behavior changed for good? Well, to answer that question and do a deep dive into the subject, I have with me a very illustrious panel. Without further ado, let me introduce them. First up, Sadashiv Nayak, CEO of Future Retail; Mohit Kampani, CEO, Hypermarkets More Retail; Kumar Rajagopalan, CEO, Retailers Association of India; Arvind Mediratta, Managing Director and CEO, Metro Cash and Carry India. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me right here on Brand Equity. Truly a pleasure. I've given my introduction, but I want the experts to give me their thoughts. So I'm going to first ask you for an overview of how 2020 and 2021 has been for modern trade. We know it's been very tough going, but if you could give me a sense and juxtapose the performance vis-a-vis 2019 to give us a sense of, pre-COVID levels to life after COVID, that would give some great perspective. Why don't you start, Sadashiv?
Firstly, it has been an exciting year. Yeah. So, I think if you just ignore the overall numbers, because that's what I guess many of them would like to know. I think let's go back and see what all has gone up. So one, the consideration set is up. The people who consider modern trade, the people who consider any kind of organized groceries up. While you made an introductory statement saying people have stopped going to hypermarkets, and I'm sure the other two retailers here would say that we have gone instead. We have taken the hypermarket back to the store. So that's a change, which is a theme which you'll hear across. So the consideration set is up, our basket sizes are up, and I think the biggest thing is innovation is up. I'm happy to share some examples as we go along. I mean, whether it's in the terms of selling the fashion through video calling, whether it is kind of making sure that you are taking care of special segments of the society for your online business, I think all that is up. And what's however changed and which is still up for is our efficiencies. I think whether it is in terms of any input matrix which you look at, the efficiencies are looking up. A whole set of new efficiency matrices are coming to retailers like us, but I think everything is up. So to my side, if you just ignore the overall impact is marred by the fact that there were norms, there were COVID, malls were shut. I think we just ignore it. I think overall numbers had to be challenged. Yeah. But if you look at all the pockets inside where business and customer, where the environment is okay, everything is looking up. So I think, and for us per se, I think with constrained resources in Future Retail and Big Bazaar and Easy Day, I think we had an excellent time in terms of challenging ourselves and coming out with something which will cater to the customers during this time.
Okay, fair point. I hear you. But let me throw it to you, Mohit, and I have a rejoinder to what he's saying. And here I'm really talking about shopper behavior. If you look at, let's say, how we behaved in 2019, and I look at my own peer group of how we have behaved in 2020 and 2021, most of us were forced to start looking at avenues during the lockdowns for home delivery of groceries and other things that we require at home. We saw the emergence of general trade getting these WhatsApp groups, ordering from there. We have, a number of online services that are delivering at home. In a sense, even when the lockdowns went off intermittently, before the Omicron wave, I have not heard of anyone actually going to a supermarket. Of course, my set will be very small, but I'm just talking as a sheer lay person through observation. Are you seeing shoppers becoming more comfortable, even people who are 50 plus, which is, the older set, which you thought would be more comfortable going to a supermarket, have kind of adapted to doing, an online transaction? Would you say that, this is true of an observation, or are you saying that this is ebbs and, flows where you see every time a lockdown is there, it'll go down and, once things normalize, we go back to the supermarket?
I think clearly the three waves have taught us completely new skill sets, which we didn't have as retailers before. So if you take online as a channel, Pre-COVID, I would argue we were behaving like multi-channel retailers, and it was a good to have. It was an add-on to our business. From that, I think we've, as an industry, and some of the top retailers have pivoted to being truly omni-channel retailers. So the store is now certainly close to the consumer at their home. A significant percentage of our revenues are online. And I think that shows us that the consumers have started accepting us as omni-channel, accepting both our offline service and our online service. And the numbers support that. So I think that we have to remember. So it's not only about coming offline to the store, it's about the brand, and the consumer decides whether they want to visit the store or the store comes to their home. And I think that's the start of something very, very exciting, because the end of the journey will be only accretive revenues for us, and I'm sure for the industry. And this path has not been easy. It's been brought about by a better understanding of the consumer, technology, being brutally efficient, better at cost. All of it has come together. So a great 24 months learning, and hopefully we've emerged out of that as an industry which can offer the consumers their choice of channels as they decide specific to the trip mission.
Okay. Let me come to you, Arvind, and as somebody who's can give me a perspective, because you're one of the biggest wholesalers of the country. How would you compare only during the COVID years, which is 2020, 2021, the robustness of general trade, in the sense that general trade coming back with a bang, and the health of modern trade?
So I'll say, Sonali, there are 3-4 seminal events which have happened apart from the pandemic, which have created disruption in the entire retail sector. First is digitalization of the economy, which was happening even before the pandemic. It got a further boost during the pandemic, but it was a process that was on even before the pandemic. Second is formalization of the economy due to demonetization and GST. Third is easy availability of risk capital, because you have now new unicorns being created every single day. And they're creating a lot of disruption in terms of pricing, delivery, et cetera. Now there are a lot of players in the quick delivery space, which deliver within 15 minutes and 30 minutes. And finally, the pandemic. So all these things are leading to significant changes in the customer behavior. I can identify 5 of these big trends that we are noticing. First is hybrid behavior. Customers are deciding where they shop, how they shop, when they shop, right? So omni-channel is the only way forward for everybody. You cannot be a pure online retailer or a pure offline retailer. You need to have both. And I have some data where, in the case of Metro, even when we are dealing with business customers like kiranas or hotels and restaurants, people who show hybrid behavior, who shop both online and offline, their buying is 5 to 8 times higher versus pure online or pure offline customer. So you're engaging with them a lot more. So that's one very big trend that we are noticing. But offline retail offers certain benefits. One is, it caters to all your 5 senses. You can touch and feel stuff, you can listen to things, you can smell stuff, you can taste things, right? Which is not possible in online retail. And secondly, human beings are, after all, social animals. You would love to go to a store and interact with people. That cannot go away. So while in the last couple of years, there has been a shift towards online, I will say that the future is omnichannel. Even for somebody like us, our online sales have grown almost 6 times versus the Jan-Feb-March period. And it's 20% of our business, which is pretty significant. And it's also leading to much higher level of engagement. The second shift that we are seeing across both B2B and B2C is instant gratification. People want to place an order either by click of a mouse or touching their phone, and they want it delivered now, right? Now, there can be a debate whether people are really willing to pay a premium for 30 minutes delivery or willing to wait. But the trend has changed. I remember 2 years ago, people were happy with next day delivery. Then came same day delivery. Then it became a couple of hours of delivery. Now it's 15-20 minutes. But there's a lot of cash burn which is happening. And this is important for us because that was the USP of the kiranas, who are our core customers, right? The third is, if you are doing physical stores, you need to offer retailtainment. You have to effectively engage with the customers across all the relevant touch points. It has to be a pleasurable shopping experience. Nobody's going to spend time in the traffic to come to a store for a bad experience. The checkouts have to be super efficient. The staff has to engage with customers. You need to do sampling of food. You need to, have nice areas, maybe a nice cafe where people can unwind at the end of the shopping expedition. So these are things which are becoming must-haves. Finally, it's about one-stop shop for not just products, but services. One of the advantages of online is not just about convenience, but you can pay your utility bills, you can book tickets for hotels, and you can book your airline tickets. It's also used for entertainment. You can see any movie that you want. The offline world has to adapt itself to it. And we are seeing the evolution of ecosystems. It's not possible for one company to offer everything. So you are seeing a lot of strategic alliances and partnerships being created to offer one-stop shop to the customers. And finally, at the end of the day, the Indian customer is extremely value conscious. The reason why online also took off is, apart from convenience, is the deep discounts that you get. In food and grocery, the cash burn is not funny. I know a lot of players who are losing 10-15% EBITDA on every transaction. So that's very important. Now coming to, we looked at these trends. The interesting thing is that the lowly Kirana stores or humble Kirana stores have evolved themselves beautifully in this change. And I'll share with you some data which is very mind-boggling. If you look at the total urban market, let's talk urban market, metro cities, where online has been very aggressive. The share of traditional trade used to be 68%. Jan, Feb, March 2020, the pre-pandemic period. October, November, December, the share has actually gone up to 71%. So Kiranas have gained share, and they have gained share, unfortunately, at the expense of modern retail. There are also a lot of other things which are happening in the modern retail industry, consolidation, etc., some fights which are happening. So that could have played a role. The second thing is e-commerce, despite all the hype and the hoopla, their share of food and grocery, I'm talking food and grocery for a moment, has gone up from 7.3 to only 7.7, only 40 basis point improvement in their market share.
I'm just shocked by the figure that you're saying it's gone up so minuscule. Yes. Because I would assume at least 2020, 2021, there was a big spike in online purchases.
You're absolutely right. So if you look at the data, so Jan, Feb, March 2020, the share of e-commerce was 7.3. It went up to 8.5 in April, May, June 2021 during the second wave. And October, November, December, 6 months later, it settled back at 7.7. So it's again dropped, which means the share of traditional trade and the share of modern retail has gone up. Modern trade had dropped to 19.6% in April, May, June, is now back to 21.3. So you are seeing, a lot of competition. Both traditional trade and modern trade have been evolving. As Mohit very rightly put, omni-channel is not a choice. It's the only way forward. And you see that everybody has adapted, whether it's a food and grocery shop retailer or, general merchandise retailer. So that's what is happening. So it's going to be an interesting space, which we must watch out for in the future, because the trend line is not very clear. Even traditional trade has grown, which will be baffling for many people. And, we can talk a lot about what they have done, because they have modernized, they have digitalized, they've done everything possible, because for them, it was a question of survival.
Kumar, let me bring you in and to give me the macro perspective of the retail ecosystem. It's been pointed out how each, whether it was modern trade or it was, general trade, or it was, on e-com. If you could look at all three of them, and the numbers that Arvind has just revealed, I mean, some of them I'm a bit shocked by. I didn't realize e-com has just grown, in such a very, very minuscule manner. What is your sense going forward? You've seen how consumers have behaved over the last 2 years. Yes, we are now crawling back to normalcy. What is your take on how we will shop?
So one is about what has happened in the last 2.5 years time, and what Arvind said is very revealing, and one shouldn't get too shocked about it, because let's not forget that all through the pandemic, the one sector, and most of the people here represent the food, predominantly food part of the business, and for them they are part of the essentials that was supposed to be kept open, that was allowed to be kept open. Therefore, the customer still had a choice as to where they would buy from. And as Arvind rightly said, the people who really came to the help of the consumers when they were at home were the neighborhood kiranas, because they were able to really supply. And after that were the modern retailers, to whom you could really go there, rush and pick up whatever you wanted. You had a basket of things to buy. You were able to buy everything and come back. So in that way, the balance was still kept okay. There were, of course, times when things were really shut down for everybody. Timings were curtailed. Those were times when e-commerce was the only way that you could live. But customers don't like being put under the gun and told you can only shop a particular form. And as soon as that happens, you will always see that they'll rebound. After that, they'll say, no, I can't do this sitting at home. I want to go out and shop. That social part that we already spoke about comes into existence. So it's not just one channel, it's about omni-channel that all of us are now very clearly seeing. Every time all these lockdowns, timing shifts happened, I think as much as customers went through the shocks, the businesses also went through their own methods. But it was all those times when things were almost forcefully rebooted. It's like our phones getting rebooted. And when they got rebooted, they re-engineered themselves. They also redesigned whatever they had to redesign. And they came back with some real big force. So every person in this, and as well as each of our members in the modern retail industry, have all redefined their businesses quite a bit in the last 2 years' time. And many of them say that they have achieved redesign to an extent wherein they thought they could do that after 5 years. And they've all kind of crunched that time for redesigning their business. So that's a fact. Customers do go back to convenience. They are looking at where they can get what they want. They are also very mindful of the fact that some of the people were very helpful to them during the time when they needed them most. So the nearby Kirana, the larger store that they were accustomed to going and picking up what they want, did come to help. The e-commerce also really helped them. So that's also to be taken care of. If you see the way the indices have moved, some of the larger retailers redefined their businesses so well that their business, actually the market capitalization has zoomed up. I mean, we know that for the larger players very clearly. Some of them did not grow because of something internal, but it's not because the market was not allowing them to do what they had to do. So there is a case for modernizing that's got put up very clearly because customers have got modernized. The fact is, like you said initially, people who are even very old are accustomed to doing their basic work digitally. I mean, people who are sitting in various parts of the country are accustomed to talking to their entire family on Zoom calls and various other capability of platforms, that they are now thinking that digital is the way of life. They're not looking at it as an exception. So that is going to really redefine the way all of us behave. Customers are looking for value. I think Arvind came out with this understanding of the customers really nicely. They are definitely getting more conscious about value. They are getting more conscious about convenience, but they are also getting socially more aware. The social media part of the business is also having its own amount of fun because many of them are getting influenced quite a bit about what is happening all around them, because suddenly they got to be sitting at home and really looking at their screens much more than they were otherwise accustomed to. So these are things that happened. Some sectors have done very well in this whole pandemic. When I say very well, in the sense they were not as highly impacted as the other categories. Food and electronics were the two categories that were able to kind of stand the test of time. Things like garments, wearable accessories, etc., have got marred to an extent wherein they really have to work to get back onto the track. And we are seeing that as a week-on-week number, other than for 2020, October, November, and part of December, when the garments and other sectors, which are I'd call as non-essential, although we don't want to call it non-essentials, really came back into some fold. So category-wise also there have been shifts that's happened for all of us as consumers. The things that's wonderful that's happened, and I think 2 or 3 or 4 things that will now go back to what's going to be the new way of shopping is quite interesting. One is that this whole focus towards customer acquisition and customer retention has become the way of life for every retailer. It was originally the big thing for the online retailers, but now everybody, because they can't anymore say that I don't know that customer. It is that one individual customer who is to be really tracked and understood and really retained for everybody, whether they are online or offline. Even the nearby Kirana gets worried if a particular customer doesn't come to him for a longer period of time and he starts calling up. And like you said, some of them have started sending WhatsApp messages to everybody and trying to do whatever they can to retain you, right? They would say simple things like, I've got some special undio that's come into my store. Would you like to come and buy? So these things have started happening quite a bit. The second thing that's very nice, and I think that's something to be thought about, is collaborations. At an industry level, I have seen collaborations of a nature which was even 4 years before I'd have thought not possible. All the people here on this panel collaborated on various information that they'd want to know amongst each other. On almost every retailer, even if they were competitors at a particular level, they were all complementing each other at another level. People shared resources. People shared the sales personnel to be able to handle. They were sharing human resources with each other because at some point somebody could not work with them, and on e-commerce they were able to work with them. So I think these kinds of collaborations happen. I've seen fintech company collaborating with retailers to create new kinds of value for the customers, and that's happening now. We are seeing lots more buy now pay later kind of concepts happening because of this wonderful collaborations that's happening at various levels there. Digital companies, pure play IT companies are all doing things to try and make sure that they create relevance to each other. So that's the second part. The third thing is the agility that every person has now got themselves accustomed to. You would shut the store one day, you'll open the store at some day, you kind of keep the timing shifting here and there. Suddenly your supply chain is completely not available. So what was originally the holy cow of trends and stuff like that was not hitherto the way in which they were working. And so their agility levels have become very different overall for all the retailers. The entire supply chain is anyway got redefined. There are lots more brands wanting to do D2C. They want to do direct to consumers. As much as they also want to work with retailers, they also want to try other channels. It's not just new channels. It's also about shortening the number of players. Sometimes it's about expanding. It's all kinds of things are happening there. The new thing that all of us, I'm sure on this panel, are really wondering is this whole thing around quick commerce. Because suddenly, even the nearby Kirana is sometimes slower than some other company which is able to provide quick commerce. What we otherwise thought was the biggest capability of the Chotu coming and delivery to my house is now being taken over with a fleet of Chotus all around. And that's going to make a difference to all of us when we go ahead in this whole shopping channel. After all this, I think there's a social relevance to retail that's not got lost. The trust of retail that all of us talk about is still as core to the whole thing. Companies which were not capable of retaining trust of customers have lost out, even if they are very good on e-commerce, because suddenly customers started wondering, will I get the right product? Am I really assured of the product? Am I really getting the correct price, although they are showing huge discounts? So these big questions are there at the top of minds of consumers, and that will play out as day goes by. People don't want crap to their houses at very cheap prices. They are not okay to get, it's value. Arvind said value, and I think that's important to note. So these are some of the things that we are seeing. There is one more thing that's happening thanks to the government's initiative, and I am personally excited because that's going to reinvigorate the entire industry. The concept called the ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce. It's a protocol, but what happened to the entire payment infrastructure with UPI is what I'm expecting would happen to the entire e-commerce going forward, or digital commerce going forward. So there are new things that's happening all around, and we in India have been able to experience new ways of working.
Let's talk about quick commerce. This is a new revelation, and I can order until 3 o'clock on Instamart. I have Blinkit. I have something else. I have all sorts of apps going on, and it's delivery within like 20 to 30 minutes. My question is that I'm not sure if the business model is supporting it, because let's say they give me a wrong product. No, I have to just upload pictures and I get the money back. The product is not even picked up, because I think Kiranas being run mostly by Marwadis are much more prudent in their business, than the new age kids who are running these things. I find it similar when I shop on e-commerce sites. Not so much modern retail, because there, of course, you're choosing and picking. So, that's fine. So my point is, I have one question on these new age, quick commerce outlets and their sustainability. And I have a question for modern trade. As we go forward and I'm getting more and more convenient options, does it make sense to have modern trade in the avatar that we know it as? Huge stores, so many products. Will the number of footfalls justify that kind of investment? You can take it, Sadashiv.
On specific options which you're referring to, yeah, of course, the consumer is winning. And I don't want to sit in judgment to really say which way that this business will go. Will quick commerce go? Well, frankly, the customer is going to decide. If tomorrow customer says, all of you need to do quick commerce, I'm sure we'll all adapt to it. But I'll just make a point here to say that in that whole space where the customer is really deciding all these things, I think we have to go back to the belief that why have so many people come, Sonali? I think there's a much larger belief in the marketplace, and I'm using the word marketplace very loosely, right? There's a much bigger. Has Indian retail ever been so active? I'm sure there are many more headlines getting created. There are many more investors who want to come in. So I see this as a space, and you kept on saying youngsters have come in. It's such a lovely thing, right? I mean, imagine oldies like us, me, getting passed out and youngsters coming in. So I see very positively that there are people who want to take different places of retail and services. We've stood for something, like we've stood for a 2-hour delivery as a big bazaar, and we stood for 2-hour delivery across food, fashion, home. That's a very unique proposition because you can get food. But imagine if you want to buy a white shirt for an interview tomorrow, I can deliver in 2 hours. If you think your tawa has got broken, I can deliver in 2 hours. So that's the uniqueness which we believe we are standing for and serving the customer. So my take is not sitting in judgment and saying what's the investment. One, I'm saying there's a much larger belief in the marketplace. It is attracting entrepreneurs of a very different kind, of the younger kind, as you said. Third, as long as they are serving something unique to the customer, I think we're all going to thrive. So for us, it has been a very different model. We said whatever we are doing, we are growing consumption. We with 2-hour delivery, will make sure we'll continue to grow consumption. I'm sure there will be a similar story which Mohit and Arvind will have to say from their perspective. So I'm personally not alarmed or in awe of what's happening. I'm very happy, and Kumar will agree that it's a much larger, vibrant ecosystem today. There's again a big thumbs up on the marketplace called Indian people.
Sure, Mohit, your take on these different formats and their sustainability?
Yeah. So, one thing we keep forgetting is that our industry is all of 15, 20 years old. I mean, most of us were born in 2005, 2006. I think the only, chain which is a little bit older is, of course, the Future Group and DMart. But most industry is 2005 and 6. And after that birth of offline modern trade, for lack of a better definition, of course, we all know 2013, 14 saw, huge number of online retailers coming in, Grofers, Pepper Tap, Big Basket. And now, of course, 21, 22, you have the birth of Q-commerce. I think, Sonali, this is all a natural evolution of services to consumers. And to my mind, more the merrier. We will adapt. We will adapt as older retailers, and we will certainly add services which the consumers want. The fascinating thing here is that there is only one single source of truth, and which is ultimately what consumers want. There is no other source of truth. It's not what I want, or a investor or a B investor wants.
Agreed. But Mohit, of course, it's about what I want as a consumer, but it's also about your sustainability and profitability, because you're not in the business of charity, right?
Well, let me borrow a leaf out of Kumar's book here to answer that. I think one thing which the pandemic has taught us is to be agile. And imagine running large network of stores with thousands and thousands of employees and being able to respond to local legislation or supply chain, in a matter of 8 hours, 12 hours, sometimes 4 hours. I think we built that agility, and it's now core to our operations. I would not hesitate to say that in a few years, today what's seen as an offline and online service will extend to several new channels, some of which we don't even know today. And some of them may be in the form of Q-commerce or a pick and click, on so on and so forth. There are lots of options. So I think these services will evolve, and the only thing we have to do is keep everything aside and listen to the consumer. The consumer is the only source of truth. Rest everything is hearsay, fine print, or can just lead you astray. So I think more the merrier.
Okay. Arvind, more pointed response from you?
Yeah, I have a different take on this. I honestly believe sales is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. So there's a lot of cash burn which is happening. I meet a lot of people across industry, B2B, B2C, e-commerce, brick and mortar, omni-channel. The reality is that many of these companies, we study their P&L very closely. So the average value of an order is about 300 rupees on quick commerce. And on every order, they're losing between 150 to 200 rupees. We have some of our competitors who are also, having EBITDA of minus 35%. These are all numbers available in the public domain. If you look at the Registrar of Companies website. So there is going to be some sanity. And honestly, I'm seeing that sanity come sometime this year. If you look at the US market, there were a lot of companies, startups which got listed at crazy valuations. And in the recent correction on NASDAQ, they've corrected by 60, 70%, including Zoom. Many of these companies have seen a serious correction in their stock prices. It's happening in India. Ultimately, cash matters. Cash flows are very important, right? Yes, customer is important, but the question I have is, are customers really looking at 15 minutes delivery? Will skies fall if they get delivery instead of 15 minutes in 1 hour? And that too, if the prices are better. The second thing which we need to understand, and I think this is where sometimes there's a difference of thinking between what we feel and what is happening right now in the Indian market. A lot of disruption is technology led, but retail is a business about buying stuff and selling stuff. You go to a store, whether it's online or offline, to buy some stuff, right? Material items at the right price, right? A lot of these technology companies are powered by technology and they don't have deep understanding of what is the right stuff to buy. For example, in India, there are probably 5,000 varieties of rice being consumed across different parts of the country. Many of the new age companies don't have that expertise. So they're even throwing money at this problem by hiring people from a lot of our companies, 50, 60% salary increases. Beyond a point, I think there has to be some sanity, there has to be some correction. And ultimately, only those people who have a sustainable and profitable business model will survive. Now, whether it happens in 2022 or 2023 or 2024, time will tell. But there is recently a company which was a big unicorn, competing with the top two. Valuation had peaked at 6 billion. Now they're planning to do an IPO at 1.5 billion. That's an example of what happens. There are also unicorns which have disappeared, right? Completely folded up. So according to me, ultimately, you need to have, as they say in the good old stock markets, you need to have a solid cash flow, positive cash flows, positive, business models or profitable business models to sustain your business. So we are seeing a lot of euphoria and hype in the Indian market. I think there'll be a shakeout, there'll be a consolidation, no doubt about it. When it happens, is a matter of time. That's my view on these things.
But who will be the hero or the heroes?
I think the companies which have got both the customer part of the problem sorted out, as well as the P&L sorted out, will eventually be the winners. And also this battle requires very deep pockets, because, you need to be able to sustain losses for quite some time. I also know that at least in the B2B space, there are a lot of people. FMCG is a very, I will say it's an industry because there are well-established players like Hindustan Unilever and Coke and Pepsi and Nestle. There is sanity on pricing. There is a floor on pricing. If you drop pricing below a certain level, your suppliers are cut off. Commodities, there are no such restrictions. And there are a lot of people who are driving top line right now. I don't want to name them. They buy sugar at 40 rupees, sell at 35 rupees.
Please name them.
No, I would not like to name them, but there are a lot of people who are, sugar and oil. I can do 1 lakh crore of turnover by doing that. There are people who are even, running this business at 4-5% gross margins. With the kind of cost structures that they have, is there a line of sight for profitability? Ultimately, some of the Ps who are also funding these companies will start asking that question. And we have seen, again, without naming players, that funding is drying up for many of these companies. They're going for debt raise versus equity funding. It's a matter of time before, bubble bursts and some sanity comes in. But there'll be eventually 4 or 5 big players in this whole industry, and there'll be consolidation. So it's about going back to the basics, of a good, fundamentally sound business. Attractive margins, attractive profitability, great customer satisfaction, and you need to have a moat. The question which people don't ask, it's a very relevant question, because I also invest sometimes in the startups, is the moat. What kind of moats people have built up? And many of these companies, if you ask that question seriously, don't have a competitive moat. It's like Me Too. Who's burning cash more is currently is a rat race. Who can burn more? More your burn, probably more your valuation. So that's, I think, very important in the long term, what kind of moat you have built. And I'm not saying that all companies are struggling with that, because there are companies, there are foreign companies, let me not name them again, who have a great moat because they have a fantastic customer experience. It's not about 15 minutes delivery, it's delivery on time. It's delivering the right order. It's, very smooth refund process. It's about unlimited assortment, the right assortment, right? So it's a model, as Mohit said, we're seeing a lot of things happening in the Indian market right now, but at some point of time, there'll be a shakeout and there'll be a consolidation.
I'm going to allow you, Kumar, for the last closing words before I let all of you go.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because as new players come in, they start pushing the envelope, and it kind of keeps everybody on their toes. And as all the others have said, I mean, between Mohit, Sadashiv, and Arvind, they've all told similar thing is that you can't continuously keep burning. We all understand that. The fact is that, however, there are new methods of retail that will come in. Customers will get accustomed to newer conveniences, and they would expect that from everybody. So therefore, there are things that's going to happen differently. I'll give you an example, and I think as a customer, that makes a big difference. This Sunday, I was to buy some garments, and normally buying garments is not a very simple thing. You go into the store and you buy it. But I know the brands that I like. I know the place and the fit. Everything is very clear. And some I know the people there. So I just got to kind of call up the people inside the store in the mall. I was sitting at the other end of the city. I called up, and then they were able to show what they had with them on video shopping. They were able to tell me what's available. I picked up what I wanted, quite a huge amount of buying that I needed to do. After a long time, I felt like shopping. And then they were ready to alter it, send it to me within the next 2 hours time. Complete payment, all the processes done. Now, end of the day, that ability to buy from that particular brand, from that trusted person, comes into play. And I think customers will go back to trust. And I told that at the start, and we'll come back to that. All of us agree that retail is about trust. It's not about the flash in the pan and suddenly telling, yeah, you could lure the customer a couple of times. After that, the customer knows this is not worth the play. They would go back to the brand that they trust. They would go back to the things that they really want. And many of the real brands in this country have also understood that they cannot have differential pricing and differential kind of experience for customers at different channels. So the real brands in this country come in with the omni-channel concept of their own. So with all that in mind, things will come back to a particular level of capability. I mean, Arvind talked about that multiple brands, I mean, multiple types of rice. But the fact is, even within the types of rice, I've got my own preferred brand. If it's a basmati, I've got my couple of 2 brands that I would trust more than the other brands. And that comes back into its play. I think it's about sharpening this brand experience. It's about sharpening that positioning that every brand would give. It's about sharpening the overall experience, and then making sure that you don't falter and don't do short-term things. The thing that is worrying, frankly, with the new entrants is if they are doing things in the short term, which they cannot sustain. Because if you give a customer a 50% discount today and tomorrow, and suddenly the day after that you say, now I'm only going to give 25% discount, the customer says, hell with you. I'm going to go to the person who's going to give me the 50%. So this is what is happening. So it's not simple to retain that kind of valuation for a long period of time. We've also seen some really large IPOs happen in this country. The wonderful thing, frankly, if you ask me, here my finance brain comes into the picture, is when some of these startups started thinking about IPOs. That really puts the sieve to the entire problem, right? It immediately tells that you cannot keep on burning cash and tell the investor in the market to keep on putting money back into that and showing trust into that company. The initial investors, the initial PEs could have exited, but ultimately, after the IPO, the general public are going to start valuing you on all bases, not just one about how much is the market growth. So this is nice. I think we'll all need to understand that things will change, but new types of businesses, new types of technologies is going to really stretch everybody's imagination and innovation capabilities.
Well, I must say,
share an example.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm just building on the point which Kumar said, and I think modern trade, and since all of us are representing modern in some way, was always about creating new habits, and we enjoyed when shoppers created new habits and we were able to serve them more. And I thought I'll share the initiative with us because we are debating, right, what commerce, quick commerce, fast commerce, whatever it is. I think I'll give an example of what Big Bazaar is doing, and mostly in the smaller towns. We went back and checked and said how many of our customers, especially the people you refer to, young elders, etc., how many of them really have placed their first online orders of their lives? And we realized that, and we've initiated a whole thing where you're actually putting a small kiosk and educating people to place online orders. Till date, I think it's now a 4-month-old exercise. Till date, we get 60,000 people who never placed their first online order with their life. So we are actually facilitating that, and whatever Real says in his habit building exercise, what we're really doing is making the customer invest back and invest her time into it, and we are actually facilitating that. To me, I don't know. She may learn on placing an online order here and eventually go and place in Mohit's store or Arvind's, but doesn't matter. I think all of us collectively, if we come back and say this was the real premise of modern trade, where we create a new habit. So so to cater to it, we can go back and teach. I mean, not teach really. We really facilitate a customer to go back and build that new habit. Whether she finally opts for a quick commerce or whether she opts for a lower value store, I think is up to her. So, but I think I just want to remind ourselves that as modern trade, we always play that role, and I'm sure all of us are continuing to play that.
Sure. I think hearing all of you has, definitely been enriching in terms of a peep into the future. I think we're entering a phase of a lot of excitement and chaos. But having said that, the last 2 years, I understand, has been particularly tough for the retail, sector. So hopefully things will settle down and normalcy will return. More power to you, more strength to you to carry on with such grit and determination. And I guess time will tell which formats stand the test of time and which formats collapse. But on that note, thank you so much, gentlemen. Truly a pleasure. Yes, Kumar, last word to you.
I do have a thought that frankly, retailers get most stressed when customers are under stress. Frankly, if the retail customer is choosing amongst various people, it's okay. They know that they can play the game. But the customers are not allowed to shop, or if the customers are not earning enough, that worries retailers the most. The beauty of this whole business is that every single retailer who's worth his or her salt would always look at the customer and think, can the customer afford? Are the customers having a great time? And that makes retailers feel good if they are feeling a nice place. So if the pandemic problem is kind of sorted, and if customers can shop with open capability, I think all of us in the panel are going to be the happiest.
Absolutely. And let's hope, that those days are not too far away. But on that note, thank you so much, gentlemen. Truly a pleasure. And thank you for giving me your time.